Coming up on the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast, the latest news from the sarcoidosis world, and kind of an in-depth look at dealing with elderly parents and sarcoidosis. It's all coming up.
This is the Sarc Fighter podcast, living with sarcoidosis and other rare diseases. Here's your host, John Carlin.
Hello and welcome to episode 130 of the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast. John Carlin here with you again. I want to wish you a happy new year once again. The date of this recording is January 12th, 2025. Technically, my last recording was December 30th. I probably said Happy New Year then, but it wasn't quite the new year yet, although you may have heard it in the new year. So it doesn't hurt to say it again, Happy New Year. I did mention in the previous episode that I've taken on a new job, and it's at a place in downtown Roanoke called Center in the Square. My title is Vice President for Institutional Advancement. Basically, that means I raise all the money for this arts and cultural organization that also includes a big dose of education thrown in. And Center in the Square is a huge building in the middle of downtown, basically 7 stories of arts, culture, education. Kind of guess I already said that, but the Science Museum is there. The Mill Mountain Theater is there. It's a big theater production company, and there are aquariums in the atrium, and there's a beautiful restaurant on the roof. I mean, there's just a lot going on there. But there's nothing like taking a new job, especially at my age, which is knocking on the door of what most people would call retirement age, to kind of make your mind wander and maybe drift into new philosophical realms. And also in my case, I still have a foot in my old job as a television news anchor. So basically right now I go from my new job then over to the TV station, which is only a mile away. I read the news and I go home. And a lot of you are probably thinking, well, that's what news anchors do anyway. They show up, they read the news, and they leave. But especially in a medium-sized market like Roanoke is, we as senior staff members always have a lot of input on the editorial side as well. So what are we going to cover? How are we going to cover it? Where should we put our crews? Just making those types of decisions that shape the coverage throughout the day. Well, that part of the job is gone. It's gone, right? Because I don't come in early enough to participate in any of that anymore. And honestly, I'm glad. It's kind of what I was trying to escape, as much as I was looking forward to being a part of the new job, which was most of my reason for wanting to move on. There are certain parts of the old job I'm happy to shed. And it's certainly not that I don't care about the coverage, but there are so many opinions in a television newsroom and internal politics, and it's just always a fight. It just always is. There are so many different ways that people can look at how to cover a story, or more often than not, it's not how to cover it, it's whether we cover it. Is that news? Is that not news? Is that interesting? Is that not interesting? And, it's all subjective. I mean, all of us who have been there for a while, it's professional. We know there are certain things that resonate with viewers. We know there are certain things that are important to the community, but it's still always a battle. And ultimately, you come out of a meeting and someone is always mad, right? Someone always is. And the other thing with TV news is that schedules are forever changing. So people have vacation plans and they don't get to go on vacation. Somebody is the best man or maid of honor in a wedding, and all of a sudden the news director says you can't go. And that's a tough way to live your life. And I've been doing that for a long, long time. So you're always in this environment where people are running around with their hair on fire because there's breaking news and you're having to shift things, and people don't want to be shifted. They've got momentum. They've been working on something all day, and all of a sudden someone says, well, there's a bad wreck on the interstate. forget what you were doing and go cover the wreck on the interstate. And by the way, I know it's snowing, but you're going to be live out there, and you're going to have to work 3 hours later than you intended to. And these are things that actually happen. Okay, so you're in this environment where people are angry, and then it seems never enough crews to get to all the important stories. That's always been the case, and now, honestly, TV news is, and this is no secret, it's in a critical place right now. Viewership is getting lower and lower because people are finding other ways to get their news. People are getting their news on TikTok now, for crying out loud. Someone told me the other day that there's this frog, like a cartoon character of a frog, that someone has figured out how to put it on TikTok, repeating the news of the day, and that's where they get their news. I'm like, okay, if you want that, then you definitely don't want me, because we're not really coming from the same arena. So, but it doesn't matter whether it's the frog on TikTok or what it is. People are finding other ways to get their news, and almost all of it's coming across their phone. And so appointment viewing to watch the 6 o'clock news, which is how I've made my living my entire life, is going down. It's going down. It's going down. And it's not just our newscast. It's you look at this statistic called PUTs, people using television, PUTs, and it's just down. It's down. And as a result, that means the revenues are down, right? Less people watching, less value to the advertising, less value for the redistribution rights, which is what we get paid by satellite and cable companies to run our newscast and all of our programming where I work. So you've kind of got this downward cycle, and I don't want to be doom and gloom and kind of talk about what's happened in newspapers, which have been closing right and left for over a decade now, but man, I hope TV news finds a way to survive this, and there are a lot of strategies in place, which I won't get into. The point is that the TV news environment that I'm stepping out of has already been stressful, and now it's even more stressful for those reasons. So, not enough people, but the same need to fill as much time on the air, and the same need to react to breaking news and all those things. And so now I'm only a week or so into my new job, and I'm just here to tell you that it's nice to be out of the fray. By the time I get to the TV station, all those stressful things I talked about have been put to bed. I review my scripts. I talk to a few of the key people in the newsroom. I talk to my co-anchor. I grab a cup of coffee, and I go out and I start talking when the red light comes on. Boom. And when it goes off, I'm done. I go home, which I like. In the meantime, I have to tell you that I just love my new job helping this nonprofit that has really been the anchor of vitality for downtown Roanoke for 40 years now. And the vitality of our region is something that I have been passionate about really since I moved here in the mid-'80s. For instance, I helped to create the Blue Ridge Marathon over 15 years ago. We call it America's Toughest Road Marathon because we created a course that goes over 3 different mountains. And we're a city located in the mountains. So we said, how can we avoid all the mountains and still get in 26 miles? And then I said, to the guys that we were all kind of spitballing, I said, let's just make it the hardest marathon in the United States. And people will come here because it'll be a bucket list marathon, and we won't be competing head-to-head with every other small city in the United States that wants to have a marathon. And it's kind of worked. It's become one of the 2 or 3 biggest events in the city every year. It's helped to put Roanoke on the map. We're in all these top 10 lists, and so that's just the kind of passion that I have for this city. And I've been on numerous committees tasked with enhancing the region's reputation as a cycling destination. You guys hear me talk about riding my bike all the time. Not so much here in January where it's 22 degrees outside and we've got ice on the roads, but that'll come, right? That'll come. But so I've always felt that we're a hidden gem in the mountains here of Western Virginia. We've got this eclectic metro mountain mix with museums and athletic facilities and hiking trails and biking trails and the Blue Ridge Parkway. So, but we are big enough that we have a legitimate downtown with nice restaurants and shops and boutiques and that kind of stuff. So metro mountain mix. And this new job just feels like it's important community building work, and I'm just really happy to be doing it with this particular organization. So now, why am I talking about that? Well, it's the beginning of the year. Everybody's talking about New Year's resolutions, and this is a time for soul searching, right? I mean, I technically could be retiring right now instead of taking on a new job. I'm close enough to my mid-60s that that's definitely a consideration. My 401k is maturing. The house is basically paid for. My wife and I are the same age. We want to travel. We love our grandkids. So I could be looking that way, and all of a sudden I decide I'm going to step into this new role with a fair amount of responsibility. And there's nothing like a new job to make you reflect on your priorities. Look at who you are, and for me, in a sense, who I have been. Like what am I talking about there? Well, I've now been around long enough that I can start to see my entire life in context. How did I start out as a young man? What was I thinking back in my 20s? What motivated me back then? Why did I make the decisions that I made about my family, my life, my career? And I can start to see that with some clarity and some perspective that you certainly couldn't see while you were making those decisions. And then, as I make these decisions, what are the constants throughout my life? For instance, I would say work ethic. I would say a need to do public-facing work, right? That's my job as a news anchor. The importance of family, which has always just been so important to me. My wife and I, Mary, we've raised our 3 sons, and they're married, and thus the 7 grandkids. And now we spend as much time with all of them as we can. But, and there are almost certainly other parts of me that would, if I sat down and thought about it longer, I could probably make a list. And it's not important. I'm just trying to illustrate the types of things that you're thinking about. So, I've kind of been looking back decade by decade and using that to try to predict how things will go at this next job. And then, so let's factor in the sarcoidosis part, right? I look back now at sarcoidosis showing up in my life officially in 2015, confirmed in 2016, probably present as far back as 2012 or 2013. And now I've got 10 solid years of dealing with the disease and how that's impacted my life, how it's impacted my decision making, how it has truly humbled me. I never would have thought of myself as an arrogant person before, but I was certainly not lacking in confidence. Okay, I never have been. I'm still not. But now I look around and I say, wow, I'm vulnerable too, right? And I can't do the things that I used to be able to do physically, and everything changes once you've had one of these life-altering chronic diseases. And so now as I approach what could be retirement, I know something like sarcoidosis could come along again and hit me when I'm least expecting, or the sarcoidosis that has been controlled could flare up and it itself could come back. So do I get out now and kick back before something happens, or do I lean into this new job and look at the next 10 years, well past retirement age? But do I look at this as my last hurrah and contribution to the vitality of my home city? What's the greater good? Because no matter what, even if I'm super successful, it's just a drop in the bucket for the valley and the Roanoke Valley, and so. Do I do that and do my little part of the lift, or do I get in my RV and take off for Yellowstone? And it's hard because I do find value in what I do, but I sure would like to. I'd like to spend more time fishing, traveling, and in the back of my mind, I'd like to open up another small aquarium shop sometime and maybe do it right this time, and maybe even be open 3 days a week and go do it when I want, and the rest of the time don't worry about it. Travel, don't let it get in the way of my life. Don't depend upon it for my income. Just do it because I want to do it. But on top of all these career things, both my wife Mary and I are dealing with elderly parents, and there's a lot of concern there. Mary's been traveling from here in Virginia up to New York State to help take care of her mother who has dementia, but still lives at home. And this has all been since her father in early December, who'd been the caregiver, had a stroke. And we're now it's been some time. He's improving, but he's unlikely to return fully to his former self. So what's going to happen with him? What's going to happen with her mother? And she and her siblings are, they're cooperating. They're doing the right things. They're taking turns staying up there. So Mary's been driving back and forth. It's about an 8-hour drive each way. Not an easy place to fly to. So driving really is the best option. And then, my mother is increasingly frail. She's 90 now. She's been in and out of the hospital. My father's 90. He's amazing. He still works. He's taking care of my mom. They're still living on the 50 acres where I grew up. You've heard me mention this before. I'm sorry. He still plows the yard on our mini farm with the bulldozer, and they have had a ton of snow already. This winter, they've had several snowfalls of over a foot. But I've been traveling back and forth a little bit, trying to see them, trying to help out, and just do what I can there in anticipation of what's an inevitable situation. And so these end of life scenarios are being forced to the top of my mind. That's kind of what I'm thinking about today, and everything. As we begin 2025 in the Carlin household is just a big swirl right now. It's just a big swirl as we begin 2025. And I would say that my only New Year's resolution is I have to try and figure it out. That's where I'm at. That's what I'm thinking about right here on a snowy Sunday morning as I look forward to the beginning of the new year. Well, but as we look forward to this new year, there's a lot of stuff going on with FSR, and I got a really nice. Many of us, if you're on the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research email list, you may have also received this email. I made a small contribution at the end of the year. I'd always like to be able to give more, but things are what they are right now. So the email from FSR says, as we wrap up the end of the year campaign, we are filled with deep gratitude for you, our incredible supporters. Your commitment to fighting sarcoidosis has made this year extraordinary. And they say, we are thrilled to share that nearly 350 donors raised over $100,000 for FSR in the month of December. That's 1 month. Testament to the power of our community and our shared commitment to those impacted by sarcoidosis. Together, we have achieved something truly remarkable. And they go on, and I want to read this to you, but this is what that money goes to, right? So it continues, your support helps create powerful moments. In 2024, FSR increased research funding by $800,000, an incredible 190% increase. We expanded our Global Sarcoidosis Clinic Alliance to include 40 leading clinics nationwide. Everyday researchers are working tirelessly to uncover new insights. In addition, we expanded our patient support program to include more support groups, resources such as blogs, podcast episodes, you're listening to it, webinars, and with your support, we can continue to fund our vital work. So, and then the email continues, as we enter into our 25th anniversary, we're excited to build on the momentum that we've gathered over the past years. And here's a look ahead at what's coming in 2025. Look for the annual FSR Patient Summit hosted virtually to allow more attendees to connect and learn. share the FSR 10-year patient registry report, which they're working on. The FSR Gala will return this year. Stay tuned for location and date announcements. As you might remember, the podcast was honored at the last one, and I look forward to maybe attending as this year, just as an attendee. Launch the Coalition for Clinical Trial Equity, celebrate Sarcoidosis Awareness Month in April, so mark your calendar now, and publish our patient-focused drug development patient voice white paper, which goes back to our big advancement this year, where we were able to share everything about sarcoidosis with the FDA. So that's just kind of a real optimistic look forward to many of the things that are happening coming up in 2025 from the folks at FSR. Something else that's happening, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this. Have you heard about this new streaming show on Netflix called No Good Deed? Several people have pointed out to me because one of the main characters has sarcoidosis. And Sarcoidosis News published a piece by Carrie Wong, who, by the way, was a guest way back on episode 10 of the Sarc Fighter podcast. And she wrote about it, which kind of saves me having to go back and do any research. I haven't watched the show yet, but numerous people, including family members, have said, oh my God, there's this new Netflix thing and they've got sarcoidosis. So let me just read a little bit directly. This is from Sarcoidosis News, and Carrie Wong has a regular piece on here called Float Like a Butterfly. And she writes, the dark comedy revolves around the Morgan family, who is selling their home and a few prospective buyers through 8 episodes. And through those, we see each character's secrets, lies, and deceptions come to light. One prospective buyer, Dennis, goes to the doctor for a tetanus shot after cutting his finger on a rusty nail. The doctor asks about Dennis's medical history and suggests some lab work, and here Dennis reveals that his father died of sarcoidosis at 39 years old. So when the doctor calls with test results, Dennis is visibly shaken. He has written elevated cal and scheduled CT on a notepad, and his phone shows the results of an internet search. Dennis learns that hypercalcemia is a complication of sarcoidosis which can affect the heart, with cardiac involvement being a common cause of death. So Carrie writes, what struck me most was the reaction to this news. Thinking about his father and what he's just read, Dennis believes he is dying, and he's convinced he doesn't have much time left and wants to be sure his family is well taken care of after he's gone. And then Carrie writes, it's an understandable fear. She says, when I was diagnosed with sarcoidosis and jumped online to learn more about it, the first thing I saw was that comedian Bernie Mac had died from it, and his now widow runs the Bernie Mac Foundation in his memory. So she writes, naturally, I wondered if that would be my fate too. And how many of us have done that same thing, right? How many of us? One of the reasons I started this podcast is because I kind of wanted to give everybody a place where they could get some perspective, right? So I'll read a little bit more about what Carrie says, and then I will put the rest of this, I'll put a link in the show notes, and you can read it, or you can go ahead and watch the show on Netflix if you want. But she says it's not only Dennis's reaction that feels so familiar. When he tells his wife, Carla, that he is dying, she dismisses his concerns. I WebMD'd sarcoidosis, she says, and you just have elevated levels. Odds are you're fine. She adds for emphasis that as a pregnant black woman, she is more likely to die than he is. And this may or may not be true, but she says it in that moment only to invalidate his feelings. And that dismissive attitude is all too familiar, according to Carrie, to anyone living with sarcoidosis. When people don't understand the disease, they tend to minimize, they tend to trivialize our experience. And just about every sarcoidosis warrior I know, she says, has heard, at least it's not cancer, you don't look sick, and other equally unhelpful responses. And she says, I appreciate that the intention is most likely to console us, but these statements tend to have the opposite effect. And then she writes on a little bit more about Dennis talking to his wife, Carla, the characters in the Netflix show. And man, I feel like maybe they got it right this time. They are singing our song, and they are singing a song that we have sung many times, that the guests have shared with us many times here on the Sarkfighter podcast. So I just want to put that out there. I will sure to add this new show to my list of streaming shows that I have to watch. I've been stuck on a few. I finally finished Yellowstone, but No Good Deed is going to be on there, and I will watch that and then maybe talk about it a little bit more as I get through those episodes and as I have a chance to talk about it here on the podcast. So there's no guest today, but I just early January, we're coming out of the holidays, but I have been lining up all kinds of people all the way through February. I probably have at least 4 guests. 2 of them are researchers, and my own neurosarc doctor, Dr. Brandon Moss at the Cleveland Clinic, has agreed to come on to talk about neurosarcoidosis. So, and I've got at least one other patient already scheduled. So, I'm getting people lined up to get us through March. But this is a great time to contact me if you would like to share your story here on the FSR Sarkfighter podcast, or if you have somebody that you would like to put forward, or a topic that you would like to put forward. And by the way, if anybody knows anybody involved with the production of the new Netflix show, man, I'll reach out to them. I'm not shy. I'll ask anybody if they want to come on. So maybe that's something that we can do as well. All right, I hope you have a great and happy new year. Let's be thankful for the strides that are being made in this disease. And let me thank some people here. The official Sarkfighter song is Zombie by Mark Steyer. And you can hear Mark's story behind the lyrics in episode 12. Remember, I release every other Monday. As I'm speaking today, my trusty boxer Dougal is cheating on me once again because Mary's downstairs working in her office. And so where's Dougal? So frustrating. The backstory to the foundation for sarcoidosis research, coming up on 25 years now, goes back to episode 11 with Andrea and Redding Wilson. They talk about how they founded it. Don't forget to follow the Sarkfighter or Sarkfighter on Facebook, Instagram, Peloton, my cycling blog, Carlin the Cyclist. I'm writing about it all the time. If you're new here, you're just trying to figure out what Sark is, go back and listen to episode 2 with Dr. Simon Hart. My story is episode 1. Please send me an email. It's in the show notes, carlinagency@gmail.com. And until next time, keep fighting.
Easier to grieve if I had a breath to breathe. I feel like a zombie, just feeding and stumbling. Learn to suffer, you feel pain someday. Learn endurance, your strength will fade away. Dead man walking, trying to keep up the pace. Dead man walking, counting down his days. And I don't know what will come. Look for silver linings, but still I find none. There was potential slipping gone. It feels too fragile, but I'm holding on. I'm holding on. I'm find a way to try and adapt your life. It's not the why, but the how that plagues my mind. A new perspective, appreciate what you've got. We're dead men walking, in an instant it could be gone. And I don't know what will come. Look for silver linings, but still I find none. There was potential, slipping gone. It feels directional, but I'm holding on. I'm holding on. I'm holding on. I fear I fight every single night. Whoa, I'm still upright. Wherever there is happiness, fight to be there too. And wherever there are friendly smiles, try hard to smile too. And wherever there is sunshine, don't let fear darken you.